My name is Eve Morton. I am 29 years old. When I was 9, my mother looked a social worker in the eye and said, "She's the difficult one. Take her. My other daughter, my twin, actually has a future." She signed the papers right there, handed me a brown paper bag with my clothes, and drove home with only one of us. For 17 years, they told everyone I had run away. The neighbors, the parish. Even my own sister learned to repeat that lie with a straight face. But they didn't know something. The woman who picked me up that night never threw my file away. She kept every single page they signed. She kept every record. She kept every lie. And now, 20 years later, when my parents saw me on national television and suddenly wanted their lost daughter back, I smiled and said, "Of course. Come meet the woman who actually raised me." If this story is already pulling at you, take a second to like and subscribe. It helps the channel keep telling stories the system would rather keep filed. And drop your city and the time you're listening from in the comments. I love knowing where you are tonight. I'm Eve. Before I tell you what happened at that dinner, I need to take you back to a hospital in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, to the spring of 1996, to the morning my sister and I were born 3 minutes apart, and to the way my mother decided, very early on, which one of us would be allowed to keep her place at the table. We were named the way some parents name twin daughters, as a matched set, Ivy and Eve. My mother told everyone at the baby shower that she had picked names that went together. Ivy, Eve, like a little garden. People laughed politely because that is what people do at baby showers. 2 cribs, white, painted with our initials. Ivy's by the window, mine by the door. Whichever twin slept by the door got picked up first when she cried. Whichever twin slept by the window slept through. I was the twin by the door. Our birth certificates were registered on a single sheet. Twin A, Ivy Catherine Whitaker. Twin B, Eve Annalise Whitaker. Born May 5th, 1996. 3 minutes between us. 1 piece of paper. That paper sat in a filing cabinet at the Pennsylvania Department of Health for the next 29 years, waiting to matter. When we were 5, our kindergarten teacher wrote a report at the end of the year. The teacher wrote that we were both sweet, observant, and well-adjusted. She wrote that Eve asks more questions than her sister, particularly about why things happen. My mother read the report at our kitchen table. Then she picked up a pen. In the margin, beside the word Eve, she wrote a single word: difficult. It was the first time someone in my family used that word for me. It was not the last. By the time I was 7, my mother had begun saying it out loud to other adults in front of me. I learned that the word was a place she had put me, and that I was supposed to stay there. There was a summer when I was 8 when I got bad asthma. My mother had to take me to the pediatrician twice a month, and I had a blue inhaler that lived in the bathroom drawer. Only mine. One day she was on the phone with her sister, and I was on the stairs, and she said, "We didn't sign up for one of each. Ivy is healthy. Ivy is easy. Eve is... well, you've met her." I sat very quietly on those stairs until she hung up. Easy was the opposite of me. I learned to be less. The summer before I turned 9, my mother had a friend over for coffee. Her name was Karen. She had known my mother since college. I was at the kitchen counter drawing when I knocked a small ceramic bluebird off the shelf above me. It broke in 3 pieces. I did not cry. I picked up the pieces and put them in the trash. My mother turned to Karen, and in a perfectly calm voice she said, "Ivy is so easygoing. Eve is the difficult one. We're learning to love them differently." She said it as if she were describing the weather. Karen looked at me. Karen went home that night, took out a small green notebook she kept by the bed, and wrote down what my mother had said and the date. I did not know that for 20 more years. I picked one of the ceramic pieces, a small piece of blue wing, out of the trash later that night. I kept it in a shoebox under my bed. That was the summer the word difficult stopped being a label and started becoming a sentence. The Tuesday in September, the year I turned 9, started like any other school morning. My mother told me to put on my school shoes. She told me we had an errand. She said it might take a little while. I packed nothing. She packed for me. She used a brown paper bag from the Acme down the street. She put in a coloring book I had outgrown, a toothbrush, a sweater that no longer fit me, and one shoe she had not bothered to size. The bag had a coffee stain in one corner from the week before. I noticed because I noticed things like that. Ivy was at school already. My father drove. My mother sat in the passenger seat with the brown paper bag between her feet. No one spoke. The radio was on, very low. I asked once where we were going. My mother said, "Just an appointment, sweetheart." She used the word sweetheart, which she did not usually use, and I understood that this was the kind of appointment where she was going to use that word. The building was in Norristown. It was tall and beige, and the parking lot was almost full. Inside, a woman at the front desk pointed down a hallway. There was a laminated sign on the door of room B that read, "Voluntary placement, by appointment only." Underneath the painted letter B, you could still see a faint outline where another number used to be. I noticed that too. My parents went in. I sat in a plastic chair in the hallway. I held the bag in my lap. Across from me, a couple was hugging a little boy who looked younger than me. The mother was crying. I watched them for a long time and tried to understand what was happening to them, and to me, and whether those were the same thing. A woman came out and called me in. Her name, she said, was Janet Pierce. She had been doing intake at Montgomery County Children, Youth and Families for 7 years. She wore a pen on a lanyard around her neck. I will remember that pen for the rest of my life. It was a Bic. Blue. Cheap. My mother had clearly prepared. She had her sentences ready. My father said almost nothing. He stood by the window and looked at the parking lot as if waiting for it to give him directions. Janet Pierce asked the question she was required to ask. "Mrs. Whitaker, have you accessed Family Preservation Services?" My mother said, "We have. They will not work. She is the difficult one. Her sister has a future." She said it slowly. She said it twice, because the first time, Janet Pierce was still writing the first sentence. I watched her write it down. I watched her pen scrape across the second sheet of the voluntary placement agreement. My mother watched too. I think my mother said the line twice on purpose. I think she wanted it on the record exactly the way she had practiced it. What my mother did not see, what I did not see at 9, was that Janet Pierce did not believe a word of it. Underneath the line where she wrote what my mother said, in different ink, in much smaller handwriting, Janet Pierce wrote a second line. She wrote it as her own observation on her own authority, while my mother thought she was writing whatever a parent says. That second line would sit in a file folder for the next 21 years. My father signed first. My mother signed slowly. The Bic pen indented the paper a little where she pressed too hard. 20 years later, a man who reads handwriting for a living would point to that indentation and tell me she had been signing with her non-dominant hand. That people do that sometimes, when their dominant hand is shaking too much to be trusted. While the signatures were happening, in a room across the hall, a woman named Patricia Morton was reading a different file. She was a Family Preservation Unit supervisor for Montgomery County. 6 years from a master's degree she had not yet started. 21 years from the title she would eventually hold. Janet Pierce walked our file across the hall. Patricia read the first page. She looked up. She said one sentence to the supervisor of the day. She said, "I'd like to file a conflict of interest disclosure immediately. I cannot work this case, but my home is licensed for emergency placement, and there's no other open bed in this district tonight. If protocol allows, I can take her until the case transfers." I did not learn for many years what had been on the first page of that file that made Patricia Morton recuse herself in 3 hours. The first page had one sentence: "She's the difficult one. Her sister has a future." Written in a worker's careful script. Patricia had been doing this job for 16 years. She had heard sentences like that before. She had developed certain reflexes. The conflict of interest disclosure was filed within the hour. Patricia crossed her own name off the case as the assigned caseworker. She kept her name on it as the emergency placement because nobody else was available and because some part of her had already decided. She came down the hall and crouched to eye level with the chair I was sitting in. She did not smile. She said, "Eve, my name is Patricia. I'm going to take you to my house tonight. I have a guest room. There is soup on the stove. The light at the top of the stairs is on. You don't have to talk to me on the way." I picked up the brown paper bag. I followed her to a green Subaru in the parking lot. I did not look back. Patricia drove. She did not ask me any questions. She did not turn the radio on. When we got to Westchester, she opened the door for me and waited until I was ready to get out. The hallway light was on. It stayed on all night. I slept in my clothes. I slept with the brown paper bag at the foot of the bed, my hand on the zipper. If they came back, I would be ready. If they did not come back, I would be ready for that too. They did not come back. Not that night. Not for 5 years. Not in any way that meant what coming back is supposed to mean. For the first 38 nights at Patricia's house, I slept with the brown paper bag at the foot of the bed. It looked like a small, patient animal. On the 39th night, I put it inside a shoebox. I just decided it had done its job. Patricia did not press me to talk. She did not say things adults say when they want you to be grateful. What she did, instead, was put a laminated chart on the refrigerator. The chart said, toast, 7. Bag, 7:15. Bus, 7:32. Below that, in her own handwriting, I will be home by 5:45. If I'm late, call this number. That was the first piece of paper she ever gave me. It was on her refrigerator for a decade. She gave me the same paper, smaller, laminated, when I went to college. I still have it. She did not call me difficult. She did not call me anything, in fact, for the first week. Then, one morning at breakfast, when I had not eaten and could not say why, she said, "You decide what's in the bag today." And she pointed at my school backpack. That was the first time in my life that an adult told me a decision was mine. I packed a sandwich. I packed 2 pencils. I packed the small shoebox piece of the ceramic bluebird because I did not know where else to put it. I walked to the bus stop. I rode to a school I had never been to before. Patricia had spoken with the principal in advance. The teachers knew. None of the children knew. That was the rule. In my new 4th grade class, the teacher said, "We're glad you're here, Eve. The desk by the window is open." I sat by the window. I did not lift my hand for the first 6 weeks. I survived by being a kind of weather. Present. Quiet. Hard to remark on. Patricia worked at the county office during the day, and at night, she sat at the kitchen table with textbooks. She had decided to get a master's in social work. She did it in the evenings, 4 nights a week, for 3 years. When she was studying, she asked me to study too. She gave me my own notebook. She told me she would never read it without asking. She kept that promise. There was a folder in the bottom drawer of her desk. I noticed it when I was 11, looking for scissors. Manila, soft edges, label written in pencil. E.W. My birth name initials. The letter W, not the M she had not yet given me. I closed the drawer. I did not look inside. She caught me, gently, a week later. She did not scold me. She sat down across from me at the kitchen table and said, "There are some things I keep for you. When you're older, you'll choose what to do with them. Until then, they belong to you. I'm just the file cabinet." I asked her once when I was 12 if she was a police officer. She had brought home a small wooden frame with two pieces inside it, an old badge, Family Preservation Supervisor, Montgomery County CYF, and a new one, Deputy Director, Chester County CYF. She had finished her master's. She had been promoted. She laughed when I asked. "No," she said. "I'm a witness with a salary. They just gave me a bigger desk to do it from." I did not understand what that meant. I would understand 17 years later in the dining room of a country club, in the second when she said something very similar in front of 38 people who had been told a lie about me for most of my life. For the first 3 years at Patricia's house, my biological family did not contact me. No birthday cards, no phone calls, no visits. Patricia had an unusual habit, for a foster parent. She kept a P.O. box in town, registered in my name. She told me this once when I was 10. She said, "If anyone ever writes to you, it will come through there. I won't open it. I'll just hand it to you." In all those 3 years, only one letter ever came. It was from my twin sister. The envelope had a single ivy leaf printed in the bottom corner. I remembered the stationery. My mother had given it to Ivy on her 8th birthday. Ivy used it to write thank you notes to relatives. Now she had used a single sheet of it to write to me. The letter was very short. I will read it to you the way Patricia first read it to me. "Mom says I shouldn't write. I don't know what they said happened. I don't think it was true. I'm writing anyway. I miss the sister I had. I don't know if you got a new family yet. I hope she's nice. I won't tell anyone." That was it. No address. The envelope had been mailed from somewhere in Lower Merion. The handwriting was 12 years old. The signature was a single letter, because Ivy was already a little afraid, and a single letter was not a confession. I wrote back. I wrote 3 drafts. I tried to keep my handwriting calm. I told her I was okay. I told her where my school was. I told her I missed her. I sent the letter to the only address I had for our parents' house, because I did not know any other way. Ivy never wrote back. Many years later, when I had grown up enough to ask the right questions, Patricia told me what she suspected had happened. Patricia suspected my mother had intercepted my letter. Patricia suspected Ivy had been told, in whatever quiet ways our mother used to tell her things, that another letter would not be tolerated. Patricia did not know for certain. She did not pretend to. She said only, "Some things you will not have an answer to for a long time." The ivy leaf letter went into the folder in the bottom drawer. That same year, the spring I turned 13, something else went into the folder. Patricia drove me to the home of a friend of hers, a colleague she trusted, for dinner. On the refrigerator was a Christmas card from my biological family. It had been mailed to her friend 2 Decembers earlier. It showed 3 people in matching cream-colored sweaters in front of a fireplace. My mother, my father, my sister. There was no 4th person in the photograph. I stood in front of the refrigerator for a long time. The Christmas card was the first physical thing I had touched that proved the story about me was circulating. 3 people in matching sweaters, where there should have been 4. The edge of the card on the left side was a little cleaner than the edge on the right, as if someone had trimmed it, or sized it, or designed it. Patricia did not say anything. She just stood behind me and put a hand on my shoulder. When I turned around, she said, very quietly, "Now you know. You don't have to act on it tonight." I asked her friend if I could have the Christmas card. The friend said yes. I cut off the empty left edge and put it in the shoebox under my bed. The card itself went into Patricia's folder. That was the first piece of evidence I ever kept on my own. The lie about my running away had started in the parish bulletin. I have seen the original. Patricia kept it. The bulletin came out in the spring of 2009, 8 weeks before my adoption was finalized. My mother had known the adoption was coming. She had known there would no longer be any version of the story in which I might come home. So she made the story permanent in the only way Catholic parents of her generation knew how. She put it in the parish bulletin. The text read, "Please keep the Whitaker family in your prayers as they continue to search for their beloved daughter Eve, who left home unexpectedly in late 2008. The family asks for community support and discretion during this difficult time." It was printed on the second page, in the section reserved for prayer intentions, between a request for the recovery of an elderly grandmother and a thanksgiving for a baptism. Print run, 900 copies. Read aloud at the Sunday Mass announcements for 6 weeks. Filed permanently in the parish archive. I read it for the first time when I was 13. Patricia had laid it on the kitchen table with no commentary. I read it twice. I did not cry. I asked her one question. "How many people read this?" She said, "Every Sunday for 6 weeks. Print run, 900. Filed in the parish archive for permanent record. That's the version of you they chose to live with." I sat with that for a while. Then I asked her if I should try to write to the parish and tell them the truth. She thought for a moment. She poured me a glass of water. She said something I have repeated to myself in different versions for the rest of my life. She said, "You don't have to convince people who chose the easy story. You have to outlive it. Then you write it down. Then they will have to come to you." I was 14. I did not understand what writing it down would look like. I did not know I would spend the next 15 years learning to do exactly that. But I understood in some childhood way that the answer to a lie that was printed on paper was not to argue with the lie. It was to put a better paper on top of it. If you've ever been written out of your own family's story, by a sentence at a holiday, by a quiet edit on a Christmas card, by a name dropped from a guest list, comment below with the year it happened. You don't have to explain. Just the year. I'll read every single one of them. Now let's keep going. The adoption was finalized in May of 2009. The hearing took place in the Chester County Orphans Court, in a small wood-paneled room with no audience. Patricia had asked her colleague, a woman who had agreed to take the case after the conflict of interest disclosure, to schedule the hearing for the 5th of May. My birthday. My 13th birthday. She did not tell me this in advance. She gave it to me as a gift I would not know how to unwrap until later. The judge was an older man with reading glasses. He looked at me kindly. He asked me a question that judges are required to ask. "Eve, the Orphans Court has received the petition for your adoption by Patricia Morton. Do you understand what we're recording today?" I had prepared 3 answers in my notebook. When I opened my mouth, none of them came out. What came out instead was this: "I'm not choosing. I'm being chosen." The judge wrote it down. He said, "Yes, Eve, that's what we're recording." He signed the decree. He stamped it. He handed it across the bench to a clerk who handed it across to a clerk who handed it to Patricia. I became Eve Annalise Morton on that page. Patricia had decided years earlier to keep my middle name, Annalise. It had been my biological grandmother's name, my mother's mother, a woman who had died before I was born. She kept the name because some pieces of yourself are not for other people to decide whether you get to bring with you. She kept it because, even then, she had imagined that one day I might want to use it for something specific. She was right. That same summer, the summer I turned 14, Patricia ran a routine quality assurance pull on case files that had passed through her office during her tenure. It was a standard administrative task. She kept her own case audit current, as supervisors are required to do. She found a call log she had not been the one to take, but which had crossed her desk for review. The log was dated the 14th of June, 2010. 13 months after my adoption had been finalized. The entry read like this: "I have it memorized. So does Patricia. So does the Pennsylvania Office of Children, Youth and Families. 14:38 hours. Caller identified as Diane Whitaker, biological mother of placed minor, case PA-MC-OCY-2005-389. Caller inquiring process to retract voluntary surrender and re-establish custody. Advised. Adoption finalized May of 2009. No statutory mechanism for retraction post-finalization. Caller stated, quote, "We made a mistake. We didn't read it carefully enough." Caller terminated call. Documented per QA standard. Supervisor on duty. P. Morton, Deputy Director, Chester County CYF. She did not tell me about the call when I was 14. She waited until I turned 18. She gave me her reason that night, at the kitchen table, candles on a small cake she had bought because she did not bake. She said, "Because being wanted again is not the same as being loved. I waited until you knew the difference. I chose Bryn Mawr College for undergrad." I told Patricia I had done it because of the reputation, which was partly true. I did not tell her until later that I had done it because I wanted to walk down Morris Avenue, in the town where my biological parents still lived, in daylight, on my own legs. I walked past their house twice in 4 years, both times in daylight, both times alone. I walked on the opposite side of the street, the way you walk past a house that used to be yours. After Bryn Mawr, I went to Columbia for an MFA in creative nonfiction. I taught freshman composition. I learned to take a fact and put it on a page in such a way that the fact had weight, and the page did not collapse under the weight, and the reader could feel the weight without having to be told about it. The first piece I ever published with my real name was in The Atlantic. In the spring, I was 26. It was about the legal pathway in Pennsylvania and several other states that allows parents to surrender custody of a child to the state on the basis of behavior alone. A small kind of crack in the system, and a great many children fall through it. The headline was, "The Inconvenient Child: How American Parents Use the System to Erase the Daughter They Don't Want." I did not name myself. I did not name my family. But I named the mechanism. I named the form. I named the language. I named Pennsylvania. Patricia kept a copy of the issue in a frame. She put it on the shelf where she kept the wooden badge frame. She did not say anything about it. She did not have to. In the autumn of 2025, Riverhead Books offered me a contract for a memoir. The title was already in my head. The Difficult One. The subtitle came later, A Foster Daughter's Memoir. I had a long phone call with my editor about the structure. I told her I wanted to write it in the third person, and to call the protagonist Anne, not Eve. She was confused at first. She said, "You can use any name?" I said, "It has to be that one. She'll know. That's the point." The editor was good. She wrote back 2 days later, "Welcome home." I wrote the book in 9 months. The dedication on the first page read, "For Patricia, who turned on the light." In the acknowledgments, in the last paragraph, I included a single line. It read, "For PM, who taught me everything I know about justice without noise." The galley arrived at Patricia's house in November. She opened the box at the kitchen table. She turned to the dedication page. She placed her thumb on it and held it there for a long time. When she lifted her hand, there was a faint smudge of skin oil on the page. I did not say anything. Neither did she. The book was published on the 3rd of February, 2026. The launch event was at Politics and Prose in Washington, D.C. Patricia drove down with me. She sat in the second row. I read a passage about the first night at her house, about the hallway light, about the brown paper bag at the foot of the bed. At the end of the reading, I said something that was not in my prepared remarks. I said, "This is a story about a sister I have not seen in 21 years. I am not going to ask her to forgive me. I am not going to forgive her. I am going to introduce her to the woman who raised me. The signing line wrapped around the children's section of the bookstore. At the very end, a woman in her late 50s came up and put 4 copies on the table. Gray hair, sharp jaw, tired eyes. Her credit card name read K. Halloran. I did not recognize her. She did not say her name out loud. She just slid the books across, watched me sign each one, and said, "Some of us have been waiting for this book a long time, Eve." She did not say anything else. She picked up her books. She walked out. I would not understand for several weeks who she was, that the woman at the end of the line had been my mother's best friend from college, the woman at our kitchen table the summer I broke the ceramic bluebird. The book went on the New York Times nonfiction bestseller list at number 7, 2 weeks after publication. CBS Mornings called my publicist 3 days later. The CBS Mornings segment aired live on the morning of the 4th of March. I wore a navy blouse. The host, Linda, was kind. She had read the book carefully. She asked me about Patricia. She asked me, at the end of the segment, a question I had not prepared for. She said, "You were placed in foster care at 9. Was there a moment you knew you'd write this?" I let a beat pass. I thought about it. I told her the truth. "I knew," I said, "the moment I learned the word voluntary." The segment ran 4 minutes and 11 seconds. A still photograph from that segment, of me with my hands resting lightly on the galley, ran in 3 different morning news cycles that week. The book sales doubled. In a kitchen on the main line of Philadelphia, my mother stood in her bathrobe with a coffee cup in her hand and watched. She did not move. She did not call my father out of his office. She just stood there for a long time, holding a coffee cup that had stopped giving off steam. I know this because 2 weeks later, my mother's best friend Karen Halloran mailed an anonymous envelope to my agent. Inside was a photocopy of a single page from a small green notebook. The page had a date, June 2004, and a single line. Today at coffee, Diane said in front of Eve that Eve is the difficult one and they're learning to love them differently. Eve is 7. There was a post-it note on the photocopy. It said, "I was in your kitchen that day. I should have said something then. I'm saying it now." Patricia and I put the photocopy in the folder. The Atlantic ran a long profile of me on the 18th of March. The reporter mentioned in passing that the protagonist of my book was called Anne. She wrote, "The pseudonym Morton chose for the book's protagonist, Anne, is, she notes only in passing, a family name. She does not explain whose." My mother read that profile in her kitchen, with a pencil, on the morning it appeared. She circled the word Anne. She circled the word family. She did not show the article to my father. She put it in the bottom drawer of her kitchen, where she kept things she did not want to see again immediately, but could not bring herself to throw away. That night, she called my publisher's publicity line. She did not get me. She got a voicemail box. She left a voicemail 4 sentences long. I have the transcript. It is one of the documents in the folder. "Eve, sweetheart, this is your mother. We've read the book. We've forgiven you. We'd like to talk before this gets any further. There's a family event coming. Your sister is engaged." I listened to it 4 times. I did not call back. She called twice more in the next 10 days. My father called once. "Eve, it's your father. There's a family event. We'd like, your sister would like, for you to come. Just consider it. Please." He said my name twice in 28 seconds. I had not heard him say my name out loud in 17 years. Patricia listened with me. When the voicemail ended, she said, "He is not the strategist. She is." The invitation arrived a week later. It came in an ivory envelope with a pale green liner, hand-addressed in calligraphy. The calligrapher had written the name on the front as Eve Whitaker, not Eve Morton, not the name I had carried for 17 years, not the name on the cover of the book that was, at that moment, sitting at number 5 on the New York Times list. Eve Whitaker. The card inside was engraved. It read, Senator and Mrs. Howard Chambers and Mr. and Mrs. Paul Whitaker request the pleasure of your company at the engagement celebration of Hudson Howard Chambers and Ivy Catherine Whitaker. Saturday, the 11th of April, 2026, at 7 o'clock in the evening. Marion Cricket Club, Haverford, Pennsylvania. I held the card for a long time. Patricia held the envelope. We were at the kitchen table in Westchester. The folder was on the chair beside her. She said, They want you in the engagement portraits. They want the social pages to include your name in the caption. They want the version of the story that ends with the lost daughter coming home. I said, Yes. She said, What are you going to do? I said, I'm going to go. I said it without raising my voice. I said it the way Patricia had taught me over 15 years to say things that mattered, flatly, with all the weight underneath. I said, I want to walk in with the woman they didn't know. Patricia did not flinch. She did not laugh. She did not ask if I was sure. She said, All right, I'll come from a hearing. I won't change the blazer. She picked up a pen. She wrote a list on a napkin. The list had 4 words on it: folder, badge, blazer, RSVP. There was no word on the list that said anger. There was no word on the list that said revenge. There was no word on the list that said anything except the things that were going to be in the room. I filled out the RSVP card by hand. I wrote, in my own handwriting, Eve Morton, +1, confirmed, EM. I sealed the envelope. I dropped it in the mailbox on the corner. 2 days later, on the morning of the 2nd of April, a padded mailer arrived at my apartment in Brooklyn. It had no return address. It had been mailed from a post office in Lower Merion. The mailer was a brown padded envelope from the Acme grocery store, the same chain my mother had used to pack the brown paper bag the morning she had driven me to the county office in 2005. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a white index card. The sheet was a photocopy of a birth certificate. State of Pennsylvania. Certificate of live birth. Multiple birth. Twin A, Ivy Catherine Whitaker. Twin B, Eve Annalise Whitaker. Born May 5th, 1996. The index card had 1 word on it, in my sister's handwriting, which I would have recognized anywhere. Sorry. I sat down on the kitchen floor and held the photocopy for a long time. I called Patricia. I read it to her. I said, She knows. She read the book. She knows the name. Patricia said, She didn't send you a letter. She sent you a document. That's the version of her that has been listening. I taped the photocopy to the inside of my notebook. I put the white index card in my wallet. On the morning of the 5th of April, 6 days before the dinner, Patricia opened the bottom drawer of her desk for the first time in years. The folder was thicker than I remembered. The manila edges had softened. The label EW in pencil had faded to a pale gray. She put the folder on the table. She did not open it. She said, I never opened it without you. I'm not going to start now. I poured her another cup of coffee. We opened the folder together. The first page was the voluntary placement agreement. My mother's handwriting at the bottom, slightly slanted, the pen pressed too hard. The caseworker's handwriting in the middle, the Bic blue ink already starting to fade in places. The intake quote was right there, underlined in Janet Pierce's careful script. Mother reports the child Eve A. Whitaker is unmanageable, presents danger to her twin sister Ivy C. Whitaker, and cannot be cared for in the home. Mother states verbatim, she's the difficult one. Her sister has a future. Father concurs, does not elaborate. Family Preservation Services declined in writing. Voluntary placement requested. There was a coffee ring at the top corner of the page. Patricia smiled at it. She said, That was the first day. I was holding a cup. I didn't know yet that I was going to take you home that night. I set the cup down on the file before I knew. I had stared at this page in my mind 1,000 times. The ring was new to me, the most human thing on a piece of paper full of inhuman sentences. Underneath my mother's quote, in different handwriting, in a different ink, was the second line, the one I had spent 15 years learning to write about. Janet Pierce's observation, recorded on her own authority, filed without my mother knowing it was there. Independent observation, caseworker J. Pierce. Child presents as quiet, polite, and visibly frightened. Demonstrates no aggressive or unsafe behavior throughout intake interview, 90 minutes. Parental description does not match observed behavior. Recommend mandatory reporter outreach to school of record. Not pursued per voluntary surrender protocol. Recommend family preservation re-referral. Declined by parents in writing. Patricia tapped that paragraph with her finger. She said, "She did not believe them. She wrote it down. She put it in the file. She knew what would happen to the file. She did her job." I asked her, the way I had asked her once before, "Where is Janet Pierce now?" Patricia said, "She retired in 2019. She lives in Doylestown. I called her last week. She agreed to be on standby for a phone call on the 11th of April. She said she would have her phone on. She said she would answer." There was a third document in the folder, the call log, June 14th, 2010, 2:38 in the afternoon. My mother's voice on a recorded line, the supervisor on duty, signing at the bottom, P. Morton, Deputy Director, Chester County, CYF. I had known about the call since I was 18. I had not seen the paper. I had heard Patricia describe it. The paper was different. The paper had her signature on it. The paper had the timestamp. The paper had the line my mother had spoken into the receiver, with no one listening except a quality assurance system and a supervisor named Patricia Morton, who had not yet decided when the line would be read aloud, but had already decided that it would be. "We made a mistake. We didn't read it carefully enough." I read it twice. I read it a third time. I sat back in my chair. Patricia said, "When I walk in on Saturday, I am not just your mother. I am also the office that signed your file. Both of those things will be in the room. Your mother will see the woman who took you home. Your father will see the agency that recorded what they did. Both, at once. There will be no separating them anymore." I asked her, "Are you sure you want to bring the badge?" She picked it up off the table where it had been sitting. She held it the way you hold something you have carried so long you have stopped feeling its weight. She said, "Eve, I have worked for this office for 25 years. I have signed papers that ended people's parental rights. I have signed papers that gave children back to families who had earned them. I am not just your mother on the 11th. I am the woman who outranks every word your mother has ever said about you. I am bringing the badge because the badge does not lie. You, at 12, asked me if it made me a sheriff. I said no. I said it made me unavoidable. On Saturday, I am going to be unavoidable in their dining room. And then, we are going to leave." I did not say anything. I picked up the badge. I held it for a moment. I set it back on the table. I picked up my pen. I added a fifth word to the list on the napkin. Witness. Patricia looked at it. She nodded. She poured us both another cup of coffee. The Marion Cricket Club is a low brick building set behind a stone wall on Montgomery Avenue in Haverford. It has hosted weddings of 2 senators and 1 Supreme Court justice's grandchild. Crystal chandeliers in the dining room. Parquet floor in the ballroom. None of that mattered on the night of the 11th of April. What mattered was that the room had a doorway, and the doorway only worked one direction at a time. We arrived 18 minutes early. I had driven. Patricia had asked me to. She said it was important that I be the one with the keys to the car. The maitre d' looked at her credential as she walked past. He glanced. He did not stop her. He led us to the dining room. He said, "Ms. Morton, you are at table 3. The Whitakers and the Chambers are at the head." The place card at my seat was thick ivory cardstock. Hand-lettered in black ink, it read, "Eve Morton, not Whitaker." Somebody on the inside had requested the correction. I would not know who until later in the evening. The room began to fill. 3 round tables, 1 long head table, a photographer at the door, with a polite professional smile. I saw 3 different women carry copies of my book in their handbags. I saw one open hers, turn to a marked page and tap her companion on the wrist. I saw the woman at the end of the bar, with gray hair and a sharp jaw, lift a glass of white wine to me from across the room. Karen Halloran, the woman from the bookstore. She had brought my mother's friend group to this dinner. She had pre-loaded the room. My mother saw me before I saw her. She crossed the dining room in a navy-beaded gown, with a glass of red wine in her right hand, with her left hand already extended. She stopped 2 feet in front of me. The photographer raised her camera. My mother said loudly for the room, "My daughter, I've waited so long for this night." She put her arms around me. She held me against her shoulder. I did not lift my arms. I let them stay at my sides. The photographer took the photograph. The photograph would, days later, appear in a blog post about the engagement dinner. In the photograph, my mother is holding her daughter. The daughter is not holding her back. The internet would notice. The internet always notices. My mother stepped back. She held me at arm's length. She gave me the smile she used for parish newsletters. She said, "Eve, we have so much to talk about. Come sit with your sister." She put a hand on my elbow. She tried to walk me toward the head table. I did not move. I said, "Of course, and while we're making introductions tonight, I'd like everyone here to meet the woman who actually raised me." I said it the way Patricia had taught me. Flatly, with weight underneath. I said it loud enough that the table closest to us heard. The woman at that table turned in her chair. Patricia stood up from the second row. She did not hurry. She walked toward the head table the way she had walked into that hallway at the county office 21 years earlier. The chandelier light caught the laminated credential on the lapel of her blazer, the state seal of Pennsylvania, her photograph. The line underneath that read, "Director of Permanency Services, Pennsylvania Office of Children, Youth, and Families." She had not changed her blazer. She had come straight from a hearing in Harrisburg. The badge was clipped to her chest the way it had been on every working morning for the last 15 years. My mother saw it. The wine glass slipped out of her hand. It hit the parquet floor. It broke. Red wine spread across the cream-colored carpet under the head table, slow as a thought. My mother whispered. It was meant to be inaudible. It was not. "That's her?" Hudson Chambers, Ivy's fiancé, the senator's son, the former Philadelphia DHS intern, set down his fork. He recognized the credential before his own mother did. The room had already started to understand that something was happening nobody had budgeted for. I walked Patricia to the head table. I stopped beside my mother's chair. I lifted a small leather portfolio from under my arm. I placed it, gently, on the white linen tablecloth. She had a voice she used at hearings. She used it now. She said, "Good evening. My name is Patricia Morton. I am the Director of Permanency Services at the Pennsylvania Office of Children, Youth, and Families. I am also the woman who took Eve home in September of 2005, after her parents surrendered her at a county office in Norristown. I was assigned to her case for approximately 3 hours before I filed a conflict of interest disclosure and removed myself as caseworker. I kept her file in my home for 21 years. This is a copy. I am going to read 3 lines from it." The room had gone perfectly still. The photographer lowered her camera. The maitre d' stepped back. 3 steps, and folded his hands behind his back. Patricia opened the portfolio. She did not look down. She did not need to. She had read these pages enough that she could read them with her eyes closed. The first line, she said, from the Voluntary Placement Agreement, intake at Montgomery County CYF, September of 2005. She's the difficult one. Her sister has a future. Quote, Diane Whitaker. Recorded by intake worker Janet Pierce. A small sound came from the head table. My father, very quietly. I am not sure if it was my name or just a vowel. The second line, Patricia said. Same intake, different handwriting, independent observation. Child presents as quiet, polite, and visibly frightened. Parental description does not match observed behavior. Recorded by Janet Pierce, on her own authority, on the same page, the same day. My mother sat down slowly into the chair behind her, with both hands flat on the tablecloth, as if to hold the room still. Patricia continued. The third line, June of 2010. 13 months after Eve's adoption was finalized in this state. From a telephone call to Montgomery County children, youth, and families. Quote, we made a mistake. We didn't read it carefully enough. Caller, Diane Whitaker, documented per quality assurance standard. Signed, Supervisor on duty, P. Morton, Deputy Director, Chester County, CYF. She closed the portfolio. She set it on the table. She said, I will leave this copy here. There are other copies. The originals are in my office in Harrisburg. They will remain there. I am not here to press charges. I am not here to embarrass anyone. I am here because Eve invited me. I am her mother. In the only sense the word actually means. I have raised her for 20 years. She has done well. I am proud of her. Thank you for inviting us tonight. She turned to me. She nodded. Very small. Hudson Chambers stood up from the head table. He looked at his fiancée, then at me, then at his own mother. He said, Mrs. Whitaker, Mrs. Morton, may I see the document? His father, Senator Howard Chambers, former Attorney General of Pennsylvania, set his napkin on the table. He stood up beside his son. He said quietly, Eleanor, we are going to listen. Senator Chambers took the portfolio off the table. He opened it. He read for 30 seconds. He turned to my mother. He said, Mrs. Whitaker, is this document authentic? My mother did not answer. She could not. Ivy stood up. She had not said a word the entire night. She was wearing a pale pink dress and a small diamond bracelet. Her engagement ring caught the chandelier light. Her left hand was on the table. Her right hand was resting lightly on her stomach. I saw it before she said anything. The placement of the hand. The way she was holding herself a little differently than I remembered. She looked at me. For the first time in 21 years, my twin sister looked me in the eye. She said, I believed them. For a long time. I am sorry I waited until I needed something from you to stop. I read the book. I knew it was you on page 1. I am sorry I have been a coward. I am sorry I have been a sister you should not have had to wait for. I'm pregnant. 8 weeks. I would like the child to know she has an aunt. She was crying without making any sound. Her napkin was crumpled in her fist. She did not lift it to her face. I reached into the portfolio. I took out one last piece of paper. I unfolded it. I laid it gently on the linen in front of her. It was the letter she had sent me when she was 12, on stationery printed with a single ivy leaf in the corner, yellowed at the edges. Patricia had kept it for 16 years. Ivy looked at it. She put her hand over her mouth. She whispered, I thought she threw it away. I said, she did. But she threw it away inside Patricia's house, and Patricia does not throw things away. Ivy began to cry harder, quietly, into the napkin. Hudson sat down beside her. He put his hand on her back. Patricia picked up my coat from the back of my chair. She held it out for me. I slid my arms into it. She picked up her own coat. The maitre d' opened the door. We walked out before the entree. My mother did not call my name. My father did not stand up. Karen Halloran was the only person in the room who said anything. She said, just loud enough for me to hear, "Good girl." I did not look back. I drove. Patricia sat beside me with the portfolio on her lap. The road was dark. I said, "Did you think it would feel like that?" She said, "I thought it would feel like exactly that. I thought you would feel calm. I thought your mother would understand that the room had changed authors. I thought your sister would say what she said. I have been watching her on social media for 8 years. She has been getting closer to saying it the entire time." I said, "She is going to be a mother." Patricia said, "Yes, she is going to need an aunt. I want you to think about that when you are ready." We drove home. I parked in front of her house. The hallway light at the top of the stairs was on. It was always on. It had been on the night I arrived. It had been on the night the adoption was finalized. It had been on the night I left for college. It was on now. The next morning, my voicemail had 18 new messages. By the end of the week, it had 38. I did not listen to most of them. I listened to one. The voice on the other end was older than I remembered. Steady. Warm. "Eve, this is Janet Pierce. I worked your intake in 2005. I have wanted to call you for a long time. I am glad someone finally read what I wrote that day. Thank you for telling the truth in a way the system couldn't. Take care of yourself. And take care of Patricia. She has been carrying that file longer than she carried a lot of things. She is going to want to rest now. Let her." I saved the voicemail. I have not deleted it. There were 2 voicemails from my mother. I did not listen to them. I forwarded both to a small password-protected folder labeled simply hers. That folder is still on my computer. I have not opened it. I may, one day. I may not. The parish bulletin from the spring of 2009, the one with the prayer request, the one with the words, "Left home unexpectedly," was quietly removed from the parish archive on the 15th of April. The parish council sent my mother an email on the same day. I have seen a copy of the email. Karen Halloran obtained it, because Karen Halloran is on the parish council, and because Karen Halloran has been making a list of corrections that she would like to see made in this lifetime. The email read, "Dear Diane, in light of recent publications and community concerns, the Parish Council respectfully requests your voluntary resignation from the Catholic Women's Auxiliary, effective immediately. We hope this matter can be handled privately and with dignity for all parties involved." My mother did not respond to the email. She resigned by not showing up. She did not tell my father. On the 19th of April, 8 days after the dinner, a letter arrived at my apartment in Brooklyn. The envelope was plain white. The handwriting was Ivy's. 8 pages of legal pad paper, written on both sides, in pen. No ivy leaf in the corner. She had used regular paper this time, as if she had decided to be the writer of a new kind of letter, on stationery that was hers. Not on the stationery our mother had given her at 8. I will not read the whole letter to you. Some of it belongs to my sister and to me, but I will read 3 lines, because 3 lines are what my sister wanted you to know. The first line: "I was the daughter who was kept. I am not sure I was the daughter who was saved." The second line: "Hudson and I are postponing the wedding. He has asked me to take a year to figure out who I am before I become someone's wife. I have agreed." The third line: "I am pregnant. 8 weeks. I would like the child to know that she had an aunt before she was born. I would like her aunt to decide, on her own terms, whether she wants to be known." I read the letter 3 times. I put it on the kitchen table next to the galley of my book. I sat down at the table. I picked up a pen. I did not write yet. It is okay to not write yet. If you have ever had to choose between the family that named you and the family that raised you, I want you to know the choice is allowed. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to win it. You just have to live long enough to write it down. I sat at Patricia's kitchen table the morning after the letter arrived. I had driven back to Westchester. The folder was on the table. The badge was beside her coffee cup. The galley was on the bench under the window, where she had been keeping it. The Christmas card with the trimmed edge was in the folder. The ivy leaf letter was in the folder. The call log was in the folder. The photocopy of Karen Halloran's notebook was in the folder. The intake form was in the folder. Janet Pierce's observation was on the same page as my mother's words, the way it had been on the same page for 21 years. Patricia closed the folder. She said, "It can go back in the drawer. It does its job there." I said, "It always did." She slid the folder into the bottom drawer of her desk. She closed the drawer. The drawer made a small, soft click. The same small, soft click I had heard 1,000 times in this house. The same small, soft click that had been waiting all this time to mean something different. She put the badge in a small wooden tray on top of the desk. I sat at the table and looked at the morning light through the window. The hallway light was off. The hallway light is only ever on at night. That is the rule. I thought about